Okay, another document, another form. I did warn you that this is largely about how to fill out forms as a trainer and assessor. So this one now, we're learning how to document the needs of the client. So the client, in this case still with case study 2, the client is Mike, the owner of Mike's Bikes. So this is a little bit easier on you again. At a Certificate 4 level, it's an entry level as a trainer and assessor, and you really will be relying on your lead trainer and assessor with stacks and stacks of experience in what you're teaching in. Plus, you're going to be teaching or training and assessing in your specialisation area. So most of you probably won't be in the transport and logistics industry. You won't be forklift drivers. So it's quite appropriate at this level just for me to be showing you the different forms and which forms would be appropriate in different scenarios. So right the way through this, we'll be looking at our case study of Susan with your qualification as Certificate 4 in Training and Assessment, and we'll be looking at Mike. So he's an individual learner, but this has been generated from Mike, his boss. So it's appropriate for an individual learner who is work-based, okay, so he's learning at the workplace, to use a form very similar to this, and the RTO you end up working for will have their own form. So that's why it isn't essential that you memorise how to fill out an evoke form here, so long as you're getting the basic concepts of it. So I'll need you, when you double click on this, to fill out your own name and obviously the organisation, the client that we are working with here. So it's possible that somebody else within your registered training organisation has taken all of this information before they've handed it over to you as the trainer, perhaps. They've had an initial enrolment interview with Mike, the owner. And this is the type of information that's been recorded from that case study YouTube that we looked at earlier. So this is a prompt that the person from the registered training organisation would actually be prompted to ask the client. So in your industry, what is your main objective about? What's your objective for John? So can you describe the work practices of a competent learner, of a competent employee to meet this objective? So he'd sit back and he'd say, well, look, most of our staff, they know where the forklift access only areas are, and they always comply with our safety rules. He might say, if John's able to learn at this level, another need might be that, if he's able to manage the first little bit of this, learning the OH&S expectations, perhaps he could actually go on and do the full license. But in the meantime, we need him also, a competent employee will know the correct load weight. So, John's a labourer here at the moment, so he can't overload a pallet. He needs to know how many bikes can be placed in the crate that goes on the pallet. So, and eventually, if he does get his forklift licence, he's already got a little bit of a bad track record with his safety there. He's going to have to drive at the appropriate speed as well on the forklift. Now, poor John, it might just be the language barriers at the moment that could be a problem. But by the end of the intervention by the trainer and assessor, Mike's probably going to be making some tough choices. Remember how I said competency is not just about skills and knowledge, but it's also about attitude? If we're fixing the gap, if we're providing a translator that can patch the gap between the skills and the knowledge, and we're sure that we've made sure that John knows what's expected, then it comes down to why it's expected and what he values. And if he's going to just be dismissive about it, that's all about his attitude. And Mike's probably going to have to make some tough decisions at that time, because he cannot afford to have anyone go to workers' compensation. I mean, it's a high-risk area, so he needs to know that Mike's either going to comply with the safety rules, or, you know, John might just have to leave the employment. So, okay, but what we're hoping for is a positive outcome, that with the help of a little bit of translation, you know, we're going to have all the skills and knowledge and the attitude working, and, you know, possibly even promote him up to a forklift driver and increase his pay. So that's the ultimate aim here too. So that's already in black there for you. All you need to do is fill in the organisation on your blank form and your name there as the assessor. Okay, and then you'd be asking the client, what's the specific information that a student must know? Okay, so this is workplace specific. Okay, this just can't come off a training package which is pretty generalised. So in your workplace, Mike, what must a student know about your routines and practices and standard operating procedures? So Mike's taken you down to show you the warehouse and said, see all of these painted areas down there? That's the spot that pedestrians can walk, and they're not allowed to walk on the unpainted concrete because that's where the forklifts go. All of our OH&S procedures is that they must wear personal protective equipment. Here we need a hard hat, steel cap boots and a reflective vest, especially, you know, when they're working anywhere near the warehouse. And that they're only allowed to enter the warehouse when it's necessary for work purposes, so no loitering around the warehouse. So all that information's provided for you. And it helps us, you know, when we're dealing with this attitude issue with John. Is there any way we can help motivate John? So we've asked Mike to share with us a scenario of an incorrect practice. No, he doesn't have to give us a scenario of that actual employee. He could just talk more generally about, oh, look, sometimes employees have actually done, you know, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, you don't have to embarrass the candidate, you know, the learner so much there. But, you know, there was some information that, you know, John did have a near miss, and a near miss in a workplace is where it wasn't an accident, but it nearly was an accident. You have to report near misses as well. So obviously it sounds like John's left the pedestrian painted walkway and walked in the path of an oncoming forklift. Unfortunately, it looks like the forklift driver's braked just in the nick of time. So, you know, and you'd want to be having a conversation about how that could kill you, or, you know, put you out of work for a long period of time with lost time injuries. So, you know, we really need to have that information from the workplace, if it's applicable, to help work on that attitudinal aspect. So we've found a resource. I'll let you enjoy that yourself. This one's a little bit humorous, but you can still bring the dialogue around to, you know, just the dangers of not being safe with forklifts in the workplace. So take a minute if you've got a sec and have a little play of that. It's actually quite humorous, and that would be a good one to help break the ice with the learner and just create that icebreaker, get that rapport going, use that little bit of humour before you got into the serious stuff. Now, because we have English as his second language, you know, the word pedestrian comes up a lot in Mike's Bike's OH&S procedures and policies. So it seemed a little bit sensible just to put under the glossary the word pedestrian and describe it as a person walking, just for John's benefit there. So page 2, you can fill out the learner's name, John Smith, Job description, he'd be a labourer. Now once again you see this red text and words to the effect of, you're looking at my assessor guidelines, okay? So this is what you'd have access to as an assessor here, but this just helps you understand how to fill out your form. This is what we're looking at to decide if you filled the form out satisfactorily or not. You know, you might have something to the effect of that he picks and packs product, or you know, labours, whatever you want to do as far as his job description there. We've actually said in the guidelines there's a high degree of flexibility, but we do want that he follows occupational health and safety procedures. Under career goals, John's goal is to become a forklift driver, so we'll see whether he can get there or not. He's certainly got to be acting a lot more responsibly as a pedestrian in the area first, and making sure that his language literacy and numeracy levels can effectively be supported to work at that unit of competency level. Now there's another little link down here, and we'll get on to learning styles when we get into the really fun bit of training and assessment, all of the training side. So at the moment, just appreciate that in a work-based learning program, this might be another aspect. You might be able to offer that link to a learner and they can go through the questionnaire there. It's just a quick, I think, 2 or 5 minute questionnaire, and this helps bring up their, you know, whether they're a visual, kinesthetic or auditory learner. So just quickly, visual is the delivery style that we use at Evoke for you. So you're actually seeing the documents and you're actually auditorily hearing the instruction as well. And there's some kinesthetic learning, because then you're physically in a very short period of time taking that instruction and filling out the forms yourself. So you know, some training companies just give you inches thick of black and white reading, and you've got to try and read that and work out what to do, and we just find it's so much more quicker and effective just to screenshot it and narrate it and, you know, have you complete it properly. So visual learning is such an effective way, and most people have a fairly high degree of visual learning. Okay, that's just a little aside. That was all available for you. So then we come down to you filling out the qualification. And we started that there on the assessment plan, but just so you know, again, the code is TLI for Transport and Logistics Industry, LIC is for license. It was released, this training package, in 2001, and it's the first version, which is A. And the title of it is License to Operate a Forklift Truck, so you would need to type that in there. Because it's not a qualification, we just put the code in again under units of competency, and license to operate a forklift truck, same thing, and just place in there standalone, because at the moment we just want him to get that license. We don't need it to be part of a Certificate 2 or Certificate 3 in warehousing at this early stage. So analysis of work practices and routines. So what's the workplace task? We want him to follow the OH&S policy. The staff involved, you've got a blank there, so I'd suggest perhaps Mike. We'll keep Mike as the person on hand to make sure that he's telling that the trainer and assessor that they're using the right policy information. And, you know, they might be a second set of eyes. They might actually assist in the assessment and training as well with you. Now, this information has come from the National Vet Register, which is training.gov.au. So this is a really good time to stop and introduce how we use training packages to meet clients' needs. So what I'll do is I'll just go and open up a Word document. Get the internet going. All right. Okay, so we just go www.training.gov.au. And this is the National Vet Registry for all the registered training organisations and their scope, you know, the types of qualifications they're allowed on their scope to train and assess in. And it also is a register of all of the current courses and qualifications. So the very first thing you do is deselect the superseded data, because we only want current courses and codes. So what we're going to do here for John, and I played with this yesterday and it was playing up, we'll just try today to type in forklift. Oh, it's coming up today. That's excellent. So units of competency, and we'll go license, because we want him to be licensed to operate a forklift truck. Okay, so here it is, TLI LIC 2001A, and that was under a unit of competency. If you're interested, let's have a little look at the qualification. Now that's 1 unit within a Certificate 3 in forklift technology. Well, that's not what we're after today. We just want him to have a license to operate a forklift, possibly. So we double click on it and we can see that it's current. And we can look at the Word version rather than the PDF. If we've got the Word version open, we can edit that document, add columns to it, map it, do all sorts of things. Now, if you are training in forklift licenses, if you are a licensed forklift driver, then you would want to click through into here if that's your training package, and that way training.gov.au can always notify you of any updates and changes to that course. Now we're just going to open up a Word version of that, and we'll look at all of the components. In fact, I'll just quickly show you and round off that work-based learning program with the performance criterion, and then we'll save a whole other YouTube presentation to look deeper at the components here. If it comes up, it's just having a little sleep right now. Here it is, it's flashing at the bottom. Okay, so that's what it looks like at the front. Just change the view. Alright, so we have different components. It has a descriptor and an application of the unit. Okay, it also has the licensing information, and this the first one that we did with Susan and that you guys are doing, there's no licensing requirements, but here with this one there is licensing requirements. So we look at the unit descriptor. So it's for the operation of a powered industrial truck equipped with a mast and elevating load carriage attached to a pair of fork arms. So it sounds like there's different styles of forklifts. So this is a license for this particular type of forklift. So we'll just, for the moment, just start highlighting the important information. And the operator must be able to plan the work, conduct routine checks, and shift loads, on the pallet in a safe manner, and shut down and secure the equipment after completion of operations. So, we need to make sure then that John would have the adequate skills and knowledge and attitude to perform all of that. This is the guts of it. This is the elements and the performance criterion. So you notice here, let's just bring that up a little bit bigger again for you. There's probably a very quick way to increase the zoom. All right. Okay, so in element 1, when you're planning work, we have under the performance criterion, which is the steps to achieve this competency of planning work, we have the first step, to identify potential workplace hazards. And then 1.2 is hazard control measures are identified according to the standards in the workplace, the policies and procedures in the workplace, to ensure the safety of personnel and equipment. Now that is all that Mike requires at the outset, and if John can achieve that over a couple of training and assessment sessions, he's going to be a lot more safe around there as a labourer. Now, if he's coping really well with the language and the translation, it's possible then that Mike might consider him going through all of these other elements and performance criterion and, paying for him to get his forklift licence. We're just going to start with baby steps at the moment. So all that's happened here is in the work-based learning program that's been highlighted. Now I'm going to right-click and copy and go back down to our work-based learning program, and you can see where I've actually just pasted that directly in there. Okay, so that's the cut and paste beauty of having the Word version of that unit of competency open. So you might want to replay that, because you need, as a trainer and assessor, to know where you can access the current training packages. www.training.gov.au. Okay, so there we are. That's where that information came from, and this is the task. We want to follow the policies at Mike's place. So in his policy manual, he would actually say how many bikes can be loaded on the pallet. He would have information about the fact that the painted area is for pedestrians. With reporting hazards, I think at this level, we want to firstly make sure that John is going to notify his supervisor. He wants to stop work immediately if he notices a hazard and knows to report it. Now the duration, remember from the assessment plan when we looked at the client's requirements, he had to be assessed and or trained down in that area between 6 and 6:30 at night during a shift changeover. So that information's got to come across here. The duration, the amount of time that leaves you, is 30 minutes. This is just more information on that learning type. All right, so here we are. This is some mapping now, and this has actually been mapped out for you, and it's quite likely it will be when you're new at training and assessing, so it's still quite authentic as a form of evidence. So just so you can appreciate that there, remember those performance criterion, and we're just actually writing what the task is. And we're just sort of splitting it out because we've got a little bit more room. We're only looking at the first two performance criterions, and we're just seeing what ranges of evidence, what types of evidence we can use there. So this is just one style of form. It isn't necessarily one that we'd use too often at Evoke, but I do have to show you the full range of forms that you're likely to come across as a trainer and assessor. So this is just following the keys here. So A is about demonstration, B, questions, C, workplace observations, D, scenario, problem solving, etc., etc. Okay, so we've ticked A. That means he's got to demonstrate that he can walk in the painted pedestrian areas only. So first off, the trainer will demonstrate that to him. Then we will observe, workplace observation, that John can do that. So we're checking for his understanding, checking if it's the language barrier there, and the translator would be helping guide that demonstration as well. And then we've actually ticked H. So later on down the track, we want to get a third-party report from John, who's been observing him, that he's actually complying and doing the right thing. Okay, so that's getting back to that sufficiency that we were looking at earlier. Let's just open that one up again. Oh, okay, it's not there. The sufficiency, that you had to do, where you had to consistently perform the required task, that's where that third-party report will help here. Now there's also a question about it, so the B relates directly to the written or spoken question. Obviously, spoken questions in this situation, because of the language issues, you speak the question and then the translator can translate the spoken question and translate John's spoken answer. So you see here in red we have the benchmark response. The question is, where do people walk in the warehouse? And something to the effect of painted areas. You keep that nice and simple. He might put it into a sentence so long as you've got the keywords about the painted areas, and that's how we're designing the benchmarks. Okay, you can see as well there was a question, and this question related to another oral question, and I think we've ticked the wrong thing here. That's under F. We actually wanted it as under D, as problem solving. So I'll get rid of that one, stick it under column D. All right. So Mike wants all the bikes delivered in the next truck run, but there's not enough pallets. So what do you do? And what we want to see John do is make sure that safety comes first. And John mightn't use terms like specified, so we might put correct number of bikes. Okay, so maybe we've got specifics there, only load 20 bikes on the pallet. Yeah, so, we're getting that attitude changed around to safety, that safety's number one, not, making sure all of the bikes go off on the run. I mean, that's not John's responsibility, and I think that's what a lot of the workers don't quite realise. That's the supervisor's responsibility. If the supervisor hasn't organised and double-checked that there's the right amount of pallets, that's going to come up in all of their measures, and the supervisor's answerable to that. So it's John's responsibility to keep things safe, and that's part of this attitude that we want to get through to John now. Okay, so that's a pretty reasonable question to ask him. So you can see there, these others have been mapped through. There's a performance criterion 1.2. That's more to do with reporting hazards, and we've mapped out. So we can see in that mapping, just at a glance, there is a large range of evidence that's going to be gathered, and that way we're getting quite a holistic idea of his competency there over a period of time, with the third-party reports that he's got to keep doing it consistently as well. So so that's a work-based learning program that you might come across. So if you can just fill in a couple of those areas for me. The strategies to monitor, so the supervisor will just say Mike will be observing John. Pause this at any time and fill out the form. Judging isn't a good word in this. And supervising assessor might be involved in moderating or validating. Perhaps we'll learn about all of moderating and validating later. Now, strategies to address the barriers. Now, the barrier for John is language, okay? So we've got in here translator. Definitely put translator. Another product with language literacy and numeracy is a Dragon 12 software. It's a product by Nuance, and it's a voice-to-text product. But, it's pretty expensive, and then there's all of the time to learn it. And then it's really only something that John can use. So, if Mike really wants him working there permanently, that might be something to consider for later on. And then he's got all sorts of pathways opened up with certificate 2s and 4s and all sorts of things. So that might be later on down the track. at least we've got the translator there. And then obviously we're looking at direct questioning and direct observations to avoid that language barrier. So that's some information you can put in there. Once you've done that, save it, and it'll just stay there in your one working document. So good luck with that one.